Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Sabbath to those that are still in Sabbath, and those that aren't in Sabbath. I hope that your week will be a blessed one. I know I've given my testimony in here before, but I thought I would do it again for those that may never have heard it or want to hear it again, because it's not a fancy, happy Sabbath to everybody come in. It's not maybe the best testimony in the world, but it's my testimony. Hi, Arlene. All those that come in, I knew Arlene was on. I knew that Regina was on, and I wanted to get her, see to it that she got done with hers first before I come in here, because I did not want to take away from her. So, thank you for everybody coming in. Let me send up a prayer to heaven before I start. Happy Sabbath to you as well, Pam. Happy Sabbath. Dear Father in heaven, pray that you be with me as I give my testimony, Lord. It is a unique testimony to me and to you, Lord. It'd be different from everybody else's, Lord, but it's one that I can talk about because it brought me to you. I thank you, Lord, for bringing me to you. And I pray that those that hear this will be blessed by what they've heard, and that if they haven't accepted you, that they'll want to accept you as well. Because we are in terrible time, Lord, in perilous times, and we know there isn't much longer before the world is going to come to an end. And if we're not ready for what's to come, Lord, we're going to fall short and we won't make it. So just pray, Lord, that people will be aware of what's happening around them. Tell the whole world about you so that they will be ready when you come. Now I pray that you'll give me the patience of the saints to deal with the people that come in here that are very derogatory, Lord, and help me to help them to get the word out. Now I pray you to go with me and the rest that are in here. In Jesus' name, amen. Hi, welcome to everybody that's in here. First of all, I was born in, yes, they do. I was born in January of 1948, January 22nd of 1948. I was born in, happy Sabbath to you too. I was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it's probably 200,000 maybe now. I don't know what it was at the time I was born. You know, the population's changed, but anyway, and my father's name was Clarence, and my mother's name was Lillian. And as time went on, I didn't really get to know my mother very well, because she had gotten real sick right after my brother was born. I was born in 48, and he was born in 1950, and she had gotten real sick. Hi, Yvette. Good to see you. And by the time I turned 3 years old, my mother had passed away. And for a child of 3 years old to lose your mother like that, it was devastating for me. And I did not know what was going on, because I didn't have my mother to count on anymore. I couldn't go to her for anything. And it really hurt me. Hi, Ruben. Good to see you. And it really hurt. But as I've told you before, that my family told me that she was up in heaven looking down on me. Well, I found out since then she wasn't. But anyway, at 3 years old, to lose my mother like that was devastating for a child, because my brother, he was just a baby. He was about 4 months old. He didn't even get to know her at all. And she passes away. She had cancer. Well, my dad worked all the time, and he didn't want to leave us kids alone. So he decided to send us to his sister's house to go live with her. And hi, Jab and Gab, good to see you. And I'm glad that he did, because she and my uncle gave us, my brother and I, a very good home. We were never, things like that happen. But, I'm hoping to see her again someday, and I'm praying that she's going to be among the righteous. It's all I'm hoping for. But anyway, my dad chose to let us to live with his sister and her husband. And I must admit that, oh, hi, good to see you, that she was a loving aunt, and he was a loving uncle, and I called her my mom, because she was like a mom to me, because I had no mother no more. And she came and she took my brother and I in. She raised us as her own, because she couldn't have children of her own, and it was a loving and kind thing for her to do. And I was so thankful for that she gave my brother and I a home. She saw to it that we always had food in our mouths, clothes on our back, a roof over our head, and then we got to school. Of course, we went to grade school. We went to a parochial school, a Lutheran grade, because at that time we were Lutheran, so we went to a Lutheran grade school. By the time I went to graduated in 8th grade. From there, I went to a middle school, which was a public school. You know, I didn't know anything about Adventism at the time. Hi, Lance, good to see you. So we went to public school the rest of the time. Well, it got to the point by the time that I become a senior in high school that my aunt and I weren't always getting along. Hi, happy Sabbath to you as well. That we weren't getting along for one reason or another. So she said, well, you're going to have to go back and live with your dad. Well, as I told you before, my mother passed away when I was 3. So I had to go live with him. Well, in a way, I was kind of glad to go back there and live with him because I could be there for him. I could fix his meals and clean the house, and I could wash his clothes because I didn't have anybody to do that for him. So I was there for him for that. And I lived with him for about 3 years before my future husband came along. We just dated for a short period of time. Anyway, 18 years of age is when I went to live with my dad, and I worked to make my own way. I paid room and board to stay there, and I had menial jobs, you know, sales clerk jobs and things like that. But I did work because I wanted to provide my own way because I didn't want him to support me, you know. And I would come home and fix his meals, you know. And he was kind of picky when it come to eating, but you know, he was good as far as that goes. And there was one, I don't know, this one person, I don't know where I had met him at, but he happened to be a Jew. Well, at that time, I knew what the Jews were. You know, I knew they kept the Sabbath. Well, of course, at that time, I didn't realize it was the Sabbath, you know, and I thought it was kind of strange, you know. And I kept Sunday, and he wanted to marry me. Well, at that time, I says, I can't see this happening because I'm a Lutheran and you're Jewish. How's that going to work, you know? I just was adamant that I was not going to marry somebody out of my faith, you know. So we never, well, long story short, we never got married. Well, my dad said, well, why don't you go join the Lutheran adults? There was an adult club, a singles group for, hi Brenda, welcome. It was an adult club for singles for the Lutheran Church. So I decided to go join that club, thinking maybe I would meet somebody there. Well, I did. I met my future husband at that club, not knowing he was going to be my future husband at the time, we know. But he took a liking to me, and I'm not sure I did him right away, but he took a liking to me, and he wanted to come and meet my dad. So he met my dad. Of course, my dad didn't really like him very well, you know. But you know how parents are. They're very protective, especially fathers are very protective of their daughters. Well, no, I didn't. I chose to marry who I chose to marry, and we are not married anymore, but he is still in the faith, so that's one good thing about it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But anyway, my father didn't really like him very well for one reason or another. You know, we had been going together for a while, and on my I can't remember. I think it was my 22nd birthday, I believe it was. He got me an engagement ring. Of course, at that time, I wish I didn't know about the rings, but I didn't. But he got me an engagement ring, and he asked me to marry him on my birthday, on January 22nd. Now, picture this. It's January 22nd. We planned a wedding for April 4th of the same year, so I had very little time to even plan a wedding. But anyway, we had dated for a while, and the night he asked me to marry him, we had sat out in the driveway of my dad's for something like 45 minutes or something like that. And I think my dad kept looking out the window, wondering why we were sitting in the car so long, you know. Well, he's a shy person, and I didn't know it at the time. And after being married to him for 35 years, I can attest that he was very shy. But we sat out there in the car for 45 minutes talking about different things. He was trying to get up the nerve to ask me to marry him, and he didn't quite know how to do it. But it took him the whole 45 minutes to even ask me. And of course, I said yes right away. You know, and I told my dad I was going to marry him. Well, he wasn't too happy about that. But, you know, I told him, I says, look, I'm 22 years old. I'm of age now. You can't tell me what to do. You know, because a lot of fathers, like I said, they're protective of their daughters, and they want what's best for them. And he wanted what was best for me. But I told him I was going to marry him anyway. Well, we did get married on April 4th. We got married in a Lutheran church, and that's the same church that I have been a member of for a very long time. We had been Lutherans for a while. We moved around. You know, I lived in Fort Wayne with my aunt, and then after we got married, we moved out to we still in Indiana. We moved out in Columbia City. We were farmers out in Columbia City, and we moved around different parts of Indiana. And his parents happened to own a house in Fort Myers, Florida, and they went to that home in the wintertime. They'd go maybe 3-4 months or something in the wintertime. Well, one year they asked us to go. At that time, my son had already been born. He was 3 years old at the time. So we decided to go to Florida and spend a little time there to visit. I think we were there something like maybe a month or month and a half. I'm not quite sure anymore. But they always read the newspaper, and they got the newspaper this one night, and it said there was evangelistic meetings coming up. Well, they were all for evangelistic meetings, and they loved them, and they didn't know what the Seventh-day Adventists were, and I didn't either. My husband and I, we looked at each other. I've never heard of them. He'd never heard of them. His parents had never heard of them, but they decided to take us. Well, to make a long story short, after about 3 weeks, we both became baptized the same day. We were baptized together. And they didn't take it too well because they felt really, I think they felt bad that they had taken us in the first place. But the worst of all, because we had accepted the truth. Because yes, it was only 3 weeks. But you know something? The truth was put before us. And we could not deny the truth. The truth that I have been telling here all along on Sabbaths and during the week about prophecy and what's to come, I never heard it before until I went to those evangelistic meetings and heard it. It was the very first time I'd heard it. And when I heard about it, I told my husband at the time, I says, we can't deny this is the truth, because I didn't know what the Sabbath was up to that point. I knew that Jew kept the Sabbath, but I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know why he had kept the Sabbath, because I didn't understand at that time that the Sabbath was the true Sabbath of, the seventh-day Sabbath, Saturday was the true Sabbath of the Lord. Well, once I heard it at those evangelistic meetings, I decided we have to follow this. We have to do what the Lord says, because it was plain as day in the Bible. We could not deny it. So we both accepted it. Well, of course, his parents said, well, you fell hook, line, and sinker, didn't you? I says, you're right, we did. We fell hook, line, and sinker because I felt that that's where the Lord wanted us to be. But even before that, there were things I'm only as old as I feel. If you don't like the way I look, you can leave this Periscope, and I appreciate it if you would, please. But anyway, before we even became Seventh-day Adventists, there was a situation that come up, and I've mentioned this before, and I will go back and tell you about this situation. My father-in-law, he was a diehard Pentecostal. My mother-in-law, she was a Lutheran. He never was a Lutheran. He would go to the Lutheran church on Sunday, but he really wasn't a Lutheran church. He believed in the Pentecostal church. That's where they speak in tongues and they raise their hands up and they go crazy, And, well, they're on fire for the Lord. They have the Holy Spirit, if you want to call it that. But when they speak it in tongues, I kind of, have to question that a little bit. But anyway, and we had told our kids about speaking in tongues. He was only 2 years old at the time, but it seemed like he grasped. His sister pretty much knew. She had come along in fact, thank you. Welcome for joining this Periscope. I was going to tell you, when we got baptized in 1975, in February 20th of 1975, that was my mother-in-law's birthday. We got married on her birthday. And I was pregnant with my daughter at the time, because she was born on April 30th of 1975. Yeah, I know they speak in tongues, but so I guess you could say she was more or less baptized along with me, because I was baptized and I was pregnant with her at the time, and they wanted to give me a baby shower at that time, and I told them, I says, well, we're not members here. We just came to the evangelistic meetings, and of course our membership was there in Fort Myers, and we had to take it out of there and bring it back to Indiana where we were living. But anyway, before that time, before we even became baptized, is when my father-in-law would speak in tongues around my son. Well, my son knew a little bit about tongues enough to know that what his grandfather was speaking was not something that he really wanted to hear, because it was gibberish to him. He didn't understand it. And my son was at the point where he was just trying to learn how to talk. At 2 years old, some can talk a lot more than others. And he was learning how to talk. And he didn't appreciate his father-in-law saying what he said, I don't know if he was cursing God or not, but anyway, he just tapped. He was sitting on his grandfather's lap, and his grandfather doted on that child. He really did. He doted on him, and he was the grandchild of all grandchildren. Well, we had been visiting, and I don't know where my husband was at the time, but we were visiting there, and my father-in-law decided to start speaking in tongues around my son. Well, my son didn't really like it very well, and he kind of tapped his grandfather, I think, on the knee. I'm not sure exactly where it was, but he tapped him on the knee. Well, my father-in-law took it to mean he was slapping him. So what does he do? He puts him down on the floor. He grabs a fly swatter, one of those fly swatters that has the metal handle, and instead of just forgetting about him being tapped on the leg, he picks that fly swatter up, uses the metal handle part of the fly swatter, and he hit my son so hard on the back that he gave him welts on his back. Hi, Valerie, good to see you. He gave him welts on his back. When my husband and I realized what he had done, we could not believe it. My son really hurt. He was crying because it hurt him so bad to have welts on his back. We had gone to our pastor. We didn't know how to handle this at the time. We went to our pastor, and he prayed for us and everything. Yes, it was awful, and I had to put liniment and everything on his back. But I mean, you know something? Even at 2 years old, he never did take to his grandfather after that. He actually put a scar on that boy's back, that boy never wanted anything to do with his grandfather. And that's sad, because his grandfather doted on him, but it's the way he treated him. Yeah, well, he did see him after that, but I wouldn't let him do anything to him. Yes, it was my father-in-law. Now, on the farm, and this was after we became Adventists. I think our daughter was born at the time. She was just a baby, but they came to visit us, and my husband had an old International tractor. It didn't have a roof or anything on it. Didn't have a cab or anything on it. And my father-in-law went outside, and of course my son went out with him. He wanted to take him. He says, well, I want to take him for a ride on the tractor. I says, you can take him for a ride on the tractor, but I want you to hold him on your lap on the seat. Well, do you think he would listen to me? You know where he put him? He put him on the fender of that tractor and was riding around the farm with him on the fender of that tractor. And he wasn't riding fast. He wasn't driving it fast. But just the point of it was, he did exactly what I told him not to do. He put him on the fender of that tractor, and he could have fallen off. So I went out there, and I yelled at him, and I says, get him off the fender of that tractor. He could fall off. Well, he didn't take it too well. He came in storming mad. That's the kind of person he was. He came in storming mad. And, of course, at that time, we had, up to that point, we had borrowed some money to help us with farm expenses. My husband had borrowed money from him. Well, my father-in-law was the type of person, you don't cross him the wrong way, because he's going to bring the money situation into it, which he did. He says, you pay me everything you owe me. And we told him we couldn't pay him at the time, and we just told him, he says, if you're going to act like this, you're going to leave, and you're not going to see your grandkids. You're going to leave, Well, they didn't take to me very well, because ever since we had gotten married, we'd only been married about 10 days, and I think I've told this before, but anyway, and this is what was so very hurtful to my ex-husband and to my husband at the time. We were only married 10 days, and they had got my son their son aside, my husband, and they told him, they says, we don't want you to stay married to her. She has no money. We want you to marry somebody that has money. And he told them, he says, money isn't everything. I love her, and I want to be married to her. But when I found out that they didn't want him to be married to me because I didn't have any money, I thought, how terrible that is. Yes, that's how they were. They were money-hungry people, and because I didn't have any money, they didn't want him to be married to me because they felt that I couldn't support him at all. He was the one that was doing all the work and everything. No, it wasn't right. It wasn't right, and I didn't think too much of him acting like that either. There was many times where he would start speaking in tongues around me, and this was after my kids got a little older, and he was speaking in tongues once, and I told him, I says, please, Do not speak in tongues around me. It's gibberish. I don't want to hear about it. Because he asked me, he told me, he says, you guys have to speak in tongues to be saved. I says, show me in the Bible where that says you have to speak in tongues to be saved. And he could never prove it. He says, well, my pastor says you have to speak in tongues to be saved. I says, your pastor's not God. Why are you listening to him? You know, I know they're not real. Hi, good to see you. Welcome to anybody coming in. And I'm just fine. How are you? Good to see you. And I told him, I says, if you can't prove to me that tongues aren't real, then I don't want you speaking them around me. Well, he started speaking in tongues, and I told him, please don't do that. He touched me one time after speaking in tongues, and this is really true what I'm going to tell you now. He touched me just with a couple fingers on my arm, and I felt like an electric shock going through my arm, and I knew it was not from God, and I was taken aback by it. Yes, it is demonic, but I knew when he touched me, and the electric shock went through me, that I knew it was not from God. And I says, don't you ever do that again. Don't ever speak in tongues and touch me, because I knew it wasn't from the Lord. It was from Satan. And it was, you know, he did that all the time. He spoke in tongues a lot. And it was really, it was really sad. But what could I do? I tried to talk to him. We tried to tell him, you know, we did take him to evangelistic meetings, but they refused to go. Yes, but what they spoke in Acts was literal languages. You have to understand that's what tongues are, literal languages. It's not the gibberish they speak now. The gibberish they speak now, there's no interpreter. And if they're not speaking that you can understand them, you can't interpret it, then how do you know what they're really saying? It's a literal language. You can go to a foreign country and not know a word of that language, but somebody can start speaking to you, and God can give you the language of that country to interpret. That's what that means. It's a literal language. It's a heavenly language. It's not this gibberish that they have now, because that's all it is gibberish. And I wanted nothing to do with the gibberish. Well, he kept speaking the gibberish. Hi, bum baby, good to see you. He kept speaking the gibberish. You know, my kids didn't take to it too well. He was also much. He was also a racist to the fact that there were black kids playing in the neighborhood. And he would not let my kids go out and play with those black kids. My husband and I, we allowed them to play with the black kids, but the grandparents did not want them playing with the black kids. But you know, it took my son a long time before he realized that black kids aren't so bad, because he was scarred on that too, because he was told that he couldn't play with black kids, you know, because they weren't nice people, and you couldn't play with them. And I told him, I says, that's not right to feel that. You're judgmental. That's right. So, but to make a long story short, hi Stacy, good to see you. He just didn't want my kids to associate with any black children, and my husband and I, we felt differently. We said yes, they can play with the black children. There's nothing wrong with playing with black children. And hi, good to see you. Welcome. And I felt bad that he was that way, but what could I do? But anyway, as time went on, I got pregnant with my third child, which was a daughter. And we decided we had given her a name of Ellen Marie Watterson. She had the same initials as Ellen White, only the middle initial was changed to an M. And I went into labor with her on October 27th, 1977. And to make a long story short, she was stillborn. That was the hardest day for me. But here I had carried her 9 months. My son and my daughter were expecting a baby brother, a baby sister. At that time, I didn't have ultrasound, so it was total surprise to me. I wanted to be surprised. And when she was born, and she was pronounced dead, I just laid there and prayed to the Lord that she would be all right. But then I knew in my own mind that she wasn't. But we had the funeral for her, you know, and we made arrangements to have the funeral. But you know something, the saddest part of this whole thing, the funeral was beautiful because we had the church members there, but the saddest part of the whole funeral was my father-in-law sat there for the whole funeral and laughed about this. He laughed about it. It's like he was happy that she was gone. which really hurt me because he was a sad person to feel that way. And my husband felt bad too because we had so hoped for another child. And to give birth like that and lose that child and then have your father-in-law stand there and laugh about the whole thing. Yes, it was horrible. And, you know, I resented him a lot after that, too. I really resented him, you know, and he showed his true colors at that time. He really, really did. And, you know, to say that he didn't want her around because of the name of Ellen, because they knew we talked about Ellen White. And I guess just the name of Ellen, they didn't really like that idea very well. So he laughed about it, you know, and I was thankful that she was dead. You know, even at the gravesite was awful for me. And I was glad it was all over with. But, yes, life is precious. And the only thing I can say right now is, as I sit here, that I can hardly wait for the day that I'm going to see her again. Because I know that she's going to go to heaven, and I'm going to go to heaven to spend eternity with her. You know, Satan may have taken her now, but he's not going to take her from me when in heaven. He won't be able to. You know, so I have that to look forward to. And I know there's probably others on here that have lost children too. I don't wish that on anybody, you know, to lose a child, because that is the most devastating thing to go through, you know. But, hi, good to see you. And we had gone on different vacations after that, you know, and we did live in Hawaii for a time. We went to Hawaii. We moved to Hawaii in 1988. We wanted to spend some time in Hawaii for about a year and a half. It was in 1988, in January of 1988, that my husband and I, we had gone to Hawaii without the kids, and we left them with the grandparents because we wanted to go to Hawaii to see. We wanted to buy a house there in Hawaii, so we went without them. So we left them. It was the winter time. We left the kids home with them, you know, so we could spend some time in Hawaii. And of course, we did buy a house, and we moved there a few months later into Hawaii. You know, we lived there for about a year and a half. And yes, it's a different culture, but it's a very hard culture because us being white, and you have the Hawaiians there, we were called haoles. We were considered outcasts there in Hawaii. Hi, Arlene, good to see you. Good to see you, welcome. We were considered outcasts. It was very, very hard. We lived in Hawaii Kai, which is in Honolulu. It was a subdivision. It was it took us about probably an hour to an hour and a half to get to work every day down Kalanianiole Highway. And I can say that now yet, and I'm surprised I can. But it was the main highway there. We took the bus. Yes, it is. It's beautiful. We took the bus every day, and it took us about an hour and a half down Kalanianiole Highway. He worked at a hotel maintenance, and I worked at a shopping or a department store, and I think it's still there. I would have to Google it to see if it's still there. It's called Liberty House. It was a very swanky department store, and I went there to apply for a job. And when I went there to apply for a job, they told me that I had to work the weekends. And I told them, I says, I cannot work on Saturdays. I'm more than happy to work on Sundays, but I cannot work on Saturdays. I was surprised they hired me. That they did allow me to work on Sundays and take Sabbaths off. You know, I told them, I says, I have to be off of work by sundown Friday. I can't work past sundown on Friday, but I will work on Sunday. See, I was a witness right there because they didn't really want to hire me. But I told them that I'm a good worker, you know, and I proved to them that I could do it. You know, I was on probation. I proved to them that I could do it. And so they let me have Sabbaths off, which I was so thankful for that. Not many people will, but I was so thankful because they thought I was valuable enough and that they would let me have Sabbaths off. My husband had Sabbaths off too, where he was able to, you know, go to church on Sabbath and spend it the way we needed to spend it for the Lord and work on Sundays. And I told him, I says, any Sunday you want me to work, I'll be glad to work. I'll work every Sunday if you want. I'll work Monday through Friday or Sunday through Friday, but I will not work on Sabbath. I was adamant about that. They tried to push me to work Sabbath. There was a couple times where they called me. They said, we don't have anybody in these departments. We want you to come in. I stood my ground, and I says, no, I will not work. You know, and I put it in the Lord's hands. I figured if he wanted me to keep that job, they would let me get the Sabbath off so I could keep that job. And they did. They let me, I kept that job. Because there's many times where if you choose or you tell them you can't work on the Sabbath, the manager or your boss gets very adamant and says, you've got to work that day or don't come in the next day. That's what I was afraid they were going to tell me. But I was ready to tell them, well, if you're going to force me to work on Sabbath, I'm going to quit and get another job. But I liked that job, and I didn't want to have to do that. But, I prayed about it the whole time. And, prayer does change things because I prayed about it, and I never had to worry about them ever asking me to work on the Sabbath. And I was thankful for it because I told him, I says, there's a person that I did relief for that she got Saturdays and or Sundays and Mondays off, I think. And I said, she got her Sunday off. I says, why can't I have my Sabbath off? And I was so thankful that they gave that off to me, So after a year and a half, we decided, well, it's pretty expensive to live here, which it was quite expensive. You go to the grocery store, and of course, bread's getting high now, but it was, I think milk must have been about $5 a gallon or something, and maybe even more. It was really expensive, so we tried to avoid drinking a lot of milk and things like that. Of course, what I know now, I wouldn't have, if I'd have known then what I know now, I wouldn't have drunk it anyway. But anyway, it was very expensive to live there. We decided after a year and a half, enough is enough. We're going to have to go back to the mainland. So we chose Oregon because we knew that it was God's country. The first place we moved in Oregon was Junction City. We lived out on the farm. It was a Filbert farm. We were there, we went back to Oregon in '89, I believe it was. And we looked for a house. We rented for a while, and so till we could find a house. So we finally found a house, and we moved into the house. And then we lived there until about, I think it was 94 or so, or something like that. And then we left the kids in Oregon because kids did not want to move. So we left them here in Oregon because my daughter at that time had a boyfriend who is the father of her two oldest children, but she's married to somebody else now, but he's the father of the two oldest ones. Anyway, she had him, and my son had a Pentecostal girlfriend that he was dating that he wanted to be there for. So we told the kids, well, you can stay here, and we'll move up to Washington State. So we moved up to Washington State. We rented there for a little while, until we found a home to live in, and he's still living in that home to this day. But anyway, we moved up to Vancouver and joined the church and everything up there. And everything was going fine. At least I thought it was for a while, until 2005. A little bit did I know what was coming. Like I said, I thought everything was going okay. We seemed to be happy, but I guess in my husband's mind, he wasn't happy with me for one reason or another. He had fallen out of love with me. He says we weren't as compatible as we should have been and things like that, And I was there for him to fix his meals and everything, and I couldn't figure out what the problem was because I was submissive to him and everything. But it was just something about it. But anyway, in 2005 on Christmas Eve, he told me, he says, I've got something I want to tell you. Could you come out in the kitchen and sit down? And I thought, oh boy, what is coming? Right away, he told me, he says, we are not compatible and I want a divorce. Boy, I tell you, did the fountain flow then. It was like a river or a fountain, whatever you want to call it. I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried. I tried to talk to him. He just would not listen. It's okay. It's been 10 years, and you know something? We're better friends now than when we were married, believe it or not. He calls me every day, pretty much every day, and we're better friends now than we were married. But yes, it was terrible for me. So here it was, Christmas Eve. We were coming down to our son's because our son lived here in Eugene at the time. And we were coming down to our son's to spend Christmas Day with him. And here he had sprung this on me. I didn't know what to do. And Christmas Day come along, and I thought, I can't let them know what's happening. I cannot do that and they could tell that something was really wrong because I just wasn't myself, But I had to try to make the best of it for them. I didn't want them to really know at that time because I didn't want to spoil it for them. Yes, he did forgive him, and he's forgiven himself, yes. And anyway, that day, when it come Christmas Day, we went down. We never talked. We didn't talk much going down because I didn't have anything to say to him. After him springing that on me like that, I had nothing to say to him. I just couldn't believe he had done it to me on the holiday, no less. But, you know, I had to take it in stride, and I just took the day, and I spent it with my son and daughter-in-law and the children, and we made the best of it we could. On the way home, we didn't say much again, but that night I bawled in bed, you know, and he wanted to hold me, and I says, no, just don't hold me. You know, I just didn't feel comfortable being around him anymore after what he had said to me. So I kind of held it in, and I didn't tell my son and daughter-in-law until February of 2006. Well, I called them, and I told them what had happened. Right away, my son says, Mom, and my husband was working at the time. They says, we're going to bring a U-Haul truck. So they drove all the way from Eugene to Vancouver in a U-Haul truck, which is 125 miles. Hi, Vessel, good to see you. Welcome, happy Sabbath. They drove 125 miles in a U-Haul truck to come and get my stuff and bring my stuff up here, put it in storage until I could find a place to live. Hi, good to see you. And I was so thankful that I had them. So he says, you're not going to say anything to Dad. We're just going to get your stuff and we're going to go. So I got my stuff and left. You know, I took the car too, because the car was in both of our names. And I thought I have to have a car to drive. So we left, and I can imagine what he thought when he come home. Saw the couch gone and everything gone. Probably didn't know where I'd gone to or anything like that. I was so upset. They were upset too. We just did not want to talk to him. Well, it wasn't too long after I was at my son's. I think I lived with my son for 2 weeks, but before I moved out of my son's into my apartment that they found for me, my husband had come to the door, and they saw him pull up, and they says, he's here. Do you want to talk to him? I says, no, I don't want to talk to him. You know, I was so hurt. And maybe I should have talked to him, but if you had been in my position to spring that onto me on Christmas Eve like he did, I was really hurt, and I just didn't want to talk to him. So they went out and talked to him, and he ended up giving me the title to the car because I had the car, you know, and I think he drove his van down. Well, he eventually bought his own car, you know, and I told him, I says, I'm sorry I took the car, but I had to have a car to drive. You know, I couldn't get here any other way, you know, and he had the van so he could drive around in that anyway. But I don't know. I wanted to work it out. I says, well, let's go to marriage counseling. He says, there's no marriage counseling to it. We can't work it out. Well, before I left there to come back here, I called the pastor, unbeknownst to him, and the pastor came out to the house. Boy, did he fly off the handle when the pastor came. Before the pastor came to the door, he knew he was coming because I told him, the pastor's coming. He flew off the handle at me, and he says, oh, you're going to sick the pastor on me now? I says, well, you don't want to work it out. I had to call the pastor to see if we can work this out because what you're doing is not right. Well, the pastor said that marriages sometimes don't work, you know, and there wasn't much he could say for us because he said it was our choice if we wanted to stay together or not, which is not the right thing for an Adventist pastor to say because he should have been willing to talk things over with us, you know. But my husband at the time, he was kind of a stubborn man, and he wasn't willing to listen to reason, you know. And I told him we both had to have changes. I told him I knew that the marriage was on both of us. It was 50-50. It was him and me. We both were at fault. He wanted to blame all the fault on me. And I told him, I said, you can't blame it all on me. You've got to put some of the blame on yourself too. But he really didn't want to do that. He wanted to put it all on me. And that's what the pastor says. You're both at fault. But I thought we could work this thing out. But after the pastor came, he wasn't very happy about that, and he still wasn't going to change his mind. So that's when I just made up my mind, well, I'm going to call my son, tell him about it, and have him come and get me, which he did, you know. And he didn't talk to his dad for the longest time. He was very, very hurt. Well, when it come, I think it was around, the summer of that same year, my ex-husband had written me a lot of letters. And I've still got those letters to this day. He wrote me a lot of letters that he wanted me back, and he wanted to try to work things out, you know, and we could go on vacations and things like that. You know, at that time, I just was not ready. I was not ready. And I wrote him back and I says, thank you, thanks, but no thanks. I'm just not ready. He hurt me so deeply. And if you've been hurt at all, you know what it is to be hurt, by something like that, because it was totally unexpected. I didn't expect him to come along and say, well, we're not going to be married anymore, and I just I didn't know what to say. So I just said, oh, I'm just not ready to go back to you. So just before Christmas of that year, he comes again, and he comes to the door and he says, and I let him in and I talked to him, and I decided, well, I'm going to talk to him because that's the Christian thing to do. And at that time, our divorce was almost final, not quite. But to make a long story short, he's the one that asked for the divorce, but I'm the one that filed on him. My daughter-in-law says, well, we're going to take you up to Vancouver. We're going to drive to Vancouver. Hi, Philip. Good to see you. So they drove me to Vancouver. We found a Seventh-day Adventist attorney, and they said, we're going to file a divorce. So I went to the Adventist attorney and filed a divorce on him. Blessings on you too, Philip. And so I filed a divorce. Little did he know I had filed a divorce on him. Well, like I said, he comes, I think, in June or July of that year. Wanted to know, wrote me letters. And like I said, I still have the letters. And I wasn't ready then. He comes around close to Christmas time in December, wanting to know if he comes in the house, and he sits down and he says, hi, Darlene, good to see you. He says, do we still have a chance? Is it too late for us? You know what I told him? And I really shouldn't have, but I told him, I said, yes, it's too late. It's way too late. I says, after what you went and did, it was too late. I was still hurting. I mean, this was almost a year, but you just don't get over something like that so fast, So our divorce was final in the year of 2007. I filed divorce in February of 2006. In January of 2007, around, hi, good to see you, welcome. Around, I think it was January 8th of 2007, our divorce was final. And my son says, Mom, we're going to go with you to sign the papers, the divorce papers. We do not want you seeing your dad alone. We do not want you going by yourself. So we're going to go. Well, my son went with me. A part of me wanted to take him back, but a part of me did not, because I was still hurting. And sometimes I wish I had taken him back, because I am lonely, but I am not alone, because I have the Lord. But I'm thankful that I didn't take him back, because it's been 10 years. He's moved on. I've moved on. He's got a girlfriend. I don't have a boyfriend, but that doesn't matter to me, because I wasn't planning on getting one anyway. But anyway, in January of 2007, our divorce became final. We had to go sign papers. So my son says, Mom, you're not going to go by yourself. I will go with you. So he went with me and he drove. Yes, I do. I'm thankful for that. And so he went with me because he didn't want me facing his dad alone. We gets there to where the divorce proceedings was. And he was very, very somber. He showed up with his attorney. My attorney was there, and we signed the divorce papers. And he had all he could do to get out of there. He didn't want to even look at me or anything, and I couldn't look at him, and it upset my son. He was really crying, He says, I can't really believe that he's put you through this. And, I couldn't believe it either, but he did. He put me through this, and he just didn't want me facing it alone. A while back, he had come to Eugene Church. The last time my son had preached, my ex-husband said he was coming to Eugene Church. He always tells me, I always let him know when his son is preaching. So because he always spends the night at my house, so we could go together on Sabbath morning. Well, he never contacted me on the day before. He never contacted me Sabbath morning. So I didn't know what was up. So I waited and waited and waited, and it was time for leave for church. So I thought, well, I've got to go to Sabbath school. I can't wait on him anymore. So I get to Sabbath school, and my son was setting up, of course, since he had to preach that day. So I saw him up in front, and I went up in front, and I says, have you talked to your dad? Because I says, I waited on him, he never showed up. He says, I'll go back a little bit. The day before, I think a couple days before, he called me. His father called me. He says, I have a lady friend that wants to come and hear him preach. Are you comfortable with that? And I says, no, I am not. You know why? Because it's like she's trying to ingratiate herself into our family, that you're choosing her over me. And I says, I'm not happy about this. I am not comfortable with that. So he calls our son up, and our son said, well, Dad, it's totally up to you, whatever you do, that, but he says, Mom's not happy about it. So I did not know this is what that he had chose to come and bring her anyway. So when I got to church that Sabbath, I went up and asked my son, I says, have you talked to your dad? And he said, yes, he is bringing his lady friend, but they're not going to sit with you. They're going to sit by themselves. So I says, okay, and he said, Mom, he says, thank you. He says, Mom, he says, I'm really sorry that you're being put through this. I says, he knows, and he told me, he says, I feel that Dad is fornicating with this woman. He says, I've told him that he's fornicating with her and he shouldn't be doing it. What's going to happen? I says, well, there isn't much you can do. If he's fornicating with her, that's on him, And I think that's what he's doing too. I don't openly accuse him of it, But something? When he came to church that Sabbath, he was very cold. I didn't even know he was there. And I looked for him in the church. I knew he wasn't going to sit with me, but I guess he was the first one out of the church, because when I went back to shake my son's hand and tell him I was proud of him, that he had given that nice sermon, I says, did Dad show up? He said, yes. Hi, good to see you. He said he did show up. He came, and he was the very first one out. And I says, well, the nerve of him. He didn't say hi to me. He didn't say anything to me. And I really felt bad about that. Do you realize that he didn't call me for 2 days after that? And when he finally did call me, I jumped on him and I raked him over the coals. And I said, you didn't even have the gumption enough to come up and say hi to me and introduce me to your friend or anything. You just left. He was practically bawling. He says, I'm so sorry. He says, I shouldn't have done that. He says, would you forgive me? I says, yes, I forgive you. It was very easy to forgive him. I know it's hard sometimes to forgive people for they do. I told him, I says, what you did, and I told him these very words I'm going to tell you, I told him, I says, what you did was very cold and very, very cruel. And that's when he really bawled. He says, I'm so, so sorry. I should not have done that. I says, no, you should not have done that. I says, I expected you at least to say hello to me. I mean, I didn't have to talk to your girlfriend, but I at least wanted to say hi to you, because we'd been talking every day. And then all of a sudden, he chooses not to talk to me. Now, I do not know if it was her choice on this or was his. I never asked him. I've got a feeling that maybe it was her choice not to say anything to me. It could be that she may have told him, just leave and not say anything. And if it was, that was not very nice out of her. But anyway, things like this happen. And we still talk to this day. And, but I told him, I says, I don't want this woman. Hi, Marilyn. Happy Sabbath. I don't want this woman ingratiating herself into our family. I says, she's not your wife. I was your ex-wife. I says, I'm still around. I says, I don't want her ingratiating herself in the family and telling and calling the kids, wanting the kids to call her mom or anything like that, because it says they have a mom. And I told him, I says, I do not like that, because there are many times where this is what happened. They'll split up, and the children will have to call the new husband or wife of the spouse, they'll have to call him mother or father. And that's got to be very hard for the children to do. And I told him, I says, my kids are not going to call her mom. I'm their mother. I'm still alive yet. And I told him one time, I says, you act like I'm dead. Like I was the worst person on earth, and you can't talk to me anymore, Yeah, I know, I don't believe it's proper either. But I've forgiven him for what he did on that Sabbath. He does call me now. I mean, once in a while he gets busy and doesn't call me. But his son is planning on preaching again. I know it's not, but forgive and forget. That's what I have to do. I have to forgive and forget. I have to go on. He told me, he says, well, you have to understand. It's been 10 years. He says, I've been 10 years without somebody. I want somebody. I says, well, don't you understand? I want somebody too, but I'm not just going to get any Joe Blow off the street or anything like that. Now, I will admit that he does have somebody from the church he goes to. So he's going with a woman from the church. That's wonderful that he is. But, I don't feel like going with anybody right now. That's the thing. I still care for him. I'm not in love with him, and I don't love him. But I would say this. When we were married, I do believe that I was more in love with him than he was with me. I could tell it. Maybe at first it was the other way around. But as the years went by, I think that I was more in love with him than he was with me. And that's the way a lot of marriages are. I didn't really want the divorce, but I couldn't see any other choice at that time. And my son, he's talked to his dad. They have a very good relationship. In fact, this last Wednesday, when my son and family came back from the Midwest, my ex-husband drove their car to the airport to pick them up. And they drove him back home. So they do have a good relationship, and I'm thankful for that. However, the relationship with my daughter is another situation that I don't know what to do about. I need a lot of prayer on this because she refuses to talk to her father. She refuses to talk to her brother because of this whole thing with the divorce. I think she blames her father for the divorce. It was both of our doings. But when it comes to her brother, she is upset with her brother because back in the time when my grandson, we had a birthday for him at a park, and I think he was turning 8 that year, something like that. I just have to leave it up to God. He was 8 that year, and her oldest son, the one that's an atheist, was acting terrible, and she told me that he was not acting right. Well, my son called him down on the way he was acting. Well, because he did that, she did not take that very well. And she told him, you should not be talking to Andrew like that. She said, it's not your job to reprimand him, it's mine. And he says, well, you're not doing it. Somebody has to do it. And that's the problem with her. She would not reprimand him. When they lived with me for 9 months, I had to reprimand that kid so many times. He was disrespectful to her. He would say bad things to her. And she would not reprimand him. But the minute I would reprimand him, she'd say, Mom, this is not your job. I says, well, then reprimand him. Do something about it. Don't let him talk to you like that. He would say bad things to her, and she just left him do it. I don't understand some people sometimes, I will say one thing, that we may be divorced, but he never called me names, and I never called him names. That we were good on that, and we never mistreated each other as far as abuse, hitting each other. He never did that to me, and I never did that to him. I'm thankful to the Lord for that, because I know a lot of them end up in abusive relationships. And he said the reason he wanted to keep this amicable was for the kids. He says, I want to be your friend if you'll allow me to be, because he says, we may not be married, but we can still be friends. He says, well, absolutely, I want to be your friend. So we're still friends, and we're better friends than we were lovers, if that's possible. And I've heard a lot of people say the same thing. We can make better friends than lovers. But, and I'm still thankful that we do talk. That's right, it does. It shows maturity and respect. It has not always been easy, let me tell you. It's not been easy to be on my own. Like I said, I get lonely at times, but I'm not alone because I have God. But being lonely and being alone are two different things. Sometimes I feel like I want to date again, but sometimes I don't feel like I should. I feel, this is the way I feel. And I've heard Jamal say this too, that if there's somebody for me out there, I shouldn't go looking for that person. That person will come to me. And I've told the Lord, I says, Lord, if you have somebody for me out there, bring that person to me, because I'm not going to go looking. If I never get married again, which it probably will never happen. If the Lord chooses to leave things the way they are, I really don't care at this point. I'll stay the way they are, because he knows more for me than I know for myself. If he wants me to get married again, he will send somebody my way. If he doesn't, I will just remain the way I am, because I'm able to get along okay. It's not always easy financially. He's had to help me with things. I mean, he had to help me when it comes to my rental, to get it fixed up. But other than that, I'm doing okay, and it's been 10 years. I've never thought about going with anybody because, I'm independent. I'm on my own. I don't have to rely on anybody for anything. I can come and go as I please. I can do what I want. I can fix meals small or big, however I want. And I don't have to worry about relying on somebody else to be there for, And when we were married, I didn't mind that. I didn't mind being there for him, because he would always call me, and he would say, well, I'm coming home at such and such a time. Could you have such and such things ready for supper? And I said, sure. Yes, it is a very good thing. I think for me, it's a very good thing. At first, I didn't. Believe me, my divorce hit me very, very hard. It took me a while to get over it, but I felt that that was what the Lord wanted for me. You know, God has plans for us that we know nothing about. He knows, he knew more for me than I knew for myself. And so I'm so glad that we're still friends. That's right. We have to depend on Jesus. You know, and I've depended on Jesus this whole time. And I know he's here for me, you know. And of course, the old devil likes to come in and likes to do his crazy stuff too. But Jesus is the one I serve. And I'm so thankful that I'm still around, that I'm able to get around by myself, and that I'm able to drive my car, and that I have no problem whatsoever getting around. You know, I'll be thankful for that every day, because I know there's people that are worse off than I am. Yeah, I am reading this. But I'm just so thankful that I'm able to get around real well. I'm able to drive, come and go as I please. Yes, I am blessed. The Lord has blessed me that way too, you know. And I can go to my sons on Thanksgiving. Now my son and my husband, ex-husband, probably coming down. I'm not going to make you anything to eat. Sorry. I'm not making myself anything to eat right now. I'm just talking. But anyway, you know, I'm just so thankful that the Lord has let things work out the way they have. You know, they may not be the perfect thing. You know, that's right. It's easier. You're right. Sometimes it is easier being single. You're right. Because marriages are a hard road to hoe. Very hard, you know. And my mother-in-law found that out. She was married to my father-in-law probably over 50 years. But that was not a very pleasant marriage. Because that man would take iron skillets after her and everything else. And I forgot about the time when we had gone back to Indiana to visit. My son went with us, but our daughter stayed back here because she had her boyfriend at the time. She stayed back here. We went back to Indiana to visit them. And my father-in-law, I don't know what got into him, but he one night, we were sitting, he had already gone to bed. We were talking to my mother-in-law, my son and my husband at the time, because we were still married at the time, and me and my mother-in-law. We were talking. We're sitting in the living room talking. He had gone to bed. I don't even remember what the conversation was about or anything like that. And I don't know if that man's got itching ears or what. But he come out of the bedroom, storming. Looked like Satan. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this now. He looked like Satan coming right at me, and he went whack with his steel-toed boots, and he kicked me in the ankle. I thought he would break my ankle. I had a hard time getting up and walking. And my son stood right in front of his father, his grandfather, and he says, "You kicked my mom." He says, "No, I didn't." He says, "Yes, you did. You better never kick my mom again." He says, "Or I'm going to take after you." See, my son was still very, very hurt about what happened when he was 2 years old. He remembered that. He knew. And he never did think that much of his grandfather after that. You know, that's sad. Because, like I said, they doted on that child. They didn't think that much of my daughter-in-law, or of my daughter. Because she was like the outcast. Her and me were kind of like the black sheep of the family. You know, we couldn't do anything right as far as the father-in-law was concerned. The mother-in-law, she was a little more tolerant. I mean, I could get along with her a lot better than him. But boy, you don't want to be in a room. You wouldn't. And God rest his soul. They're both deceased now. But when he was alive, you didn't want to be in the room with him by yourself. I was afraid to be in the room by himself. When he would be sitting in the living room, I'd walk away. He was a troubled man. He seemed like a very troubled man, you know, and that's okay. And I didn't know what to make of him. I really didn't. But to come out of that bedroom like he did and whack me in the ankle, he had no business kicking me. I didn't say anything to him, about him, or anything like that. But he thought I did. And we tried to explain to him what we were talking about. Well, I heard you say something bad about me, and I don't like it, and all this and that. You know, well, we went outside, and I was crying because it hurt so bad. I went outside, and we talked to my son's grandmother at the time, my mother-in-law, and we told her, she says, Why do you stay married to that man? He's more of a hindrance than a help. Why do you stay married to him? There was no love for the two. I mean, they didn't love each other. They just tolerated each other, you know. I don't understand that sometimes either, but it's just so sad. And back in 2001, we had gotten of course, this, I said we were still married at the time. This was in, I think, October. This is, of course, after 9/11 in October. And I had never mentioned this before in my testimony, but I'll mention it. We had gone back to see my husband's family because we hadn't seen them in a long time. We saw his uncle and things like that. Well, his uncle had called him on the phone. He says, "You better get back here because your mom is my husband's mother was near death and she wasn't going to live much longer." Well, we weren't sure about it, so we decided, well, we better go back to see her. Well, she was in a nursing home, and we went to see her in the nursing home. And you know, the sad part of it was, we were there during the time she was eating. You know, we were sitting down. He was sitting right across from her when she was eating. I was helping her eat because she couldn't hardly feed herself, so I was helping her eat. And he was sitting down across from her, you know, and he was talking to her and everything. She took one look at him and she says, "Who are you?" And that really cut both of us really bad. And he says, "Well, Mom, I'm your son, Lynn." She says, "I don't have a son." I think she had a tinge of Alzheimer's, you know, and that was really hard for us to take, you know. But we sat there and, you know, I kept feeding her and he kept talking to her, you know. We took her back to her room and everything, you know. But do you realize from the time we saw her until a week later, she passed away in a week's time. And then within 24 hours of her passing away, my daughter-in-law lost her mother. So there was grieving on both sides. He was grieving for my son was grieving for his mother-in-law as well as his grandmother. I was grieving for my mother-in-law. And it was really crazy. You know, but that's the way things work out sometimes. But, you know, I was so thankful that the Lord let her live long enough for us to go back to see her. She knew, finally, she kept looking and she finally realized who he was. We were talking to her. "Hi, Alexis, good to see you. Happy Sabbath." We're talking to her and she finally realized that he was her son. But just the point that one little bit there, she didn't know who she was talking to. And like I said, I think she had Alzheimer's. Happy Sabbath to you. And it really, really hurts when you're talking to somebody like that and they're not comprehending who you are, you know. But, oh, you were watching Dwayne Lemon. Okay, good. You'll have to watch the replay. But anyway, I just thank the Lord afterwards that he left her live for that whole time, because we didn't know if we were going to make it there in time, because he said she was at death's door when he called us. Of course, we had to get a flight and everything out to go see her, and we were just so thankful that she was still alive when we got there. And then he left her live another week, you know, and she died in her 80s. Her husband, my father-in-law, passed away about 7 years before she did. And she was kind of put in the nursing home after that because she couldn't be on her own. You know, she just couldn't. I know she had gotten to the point where she couldn't feed herself anymore. So they put her in the nursing home, the brothers and sisters. And she had 5 brothers and sisters. So there was a big family. So they decided to put her in the nursing home, and so she could get around the clock nursing care. And I was glad for that they did that too, you know. And my aunt, the one that raised me, that took my brother and I in, she eventually ended up in a nursing home too. She passed away in December of 2015, so she's no longer with us either. But you know, these people that were in my life for all these years, I'm so thankful that the Lord permitted them to be there as long as they did. You know, and they're no longer with us, and I couldn't go back to when my aunt passed away for her funeral or anything like that. But I'm so thankful that she was there for my brother and I. She gave us a home. We had never want for anything. You know, she provided for us all the way. We got to school, you know, and she picked us up when she needed to, you know, and we had food on our back, clothing, and it was just wonderful. And I had such a great life with my aunt. I often wonder what kind of life I would have had if my mother would have lived. But, you know, that's something I'll never know, you know. And I'm also going to never know what kind of life my daughter would have had if she had lived and wouldn't have been stillborn. I often wonder about that, too. What kind of life would she had? You know, I guess I'll never know that either. Would she have been a doctor or a lawyer, or what would she have been? Hard to say, you know. But I'm just thankful that I just had her for a short period of time. She was stillborn, but I was able to carry her at least. And I'm looking forward to the day when I can see her again, and I'm hoping I can see all my family members again. If I had an advice about relationships, what would it be? Take each day as it comes. If you're in a relationship, just take each day as it comes. And like I said, I thought my relationship, my marriage, because I don't know if I told you this, but we were married 35 years before he pulled the rug out from underneath me. And you would never think that after 35 years that anybody would want to get a divorce. But he fell out of love with me for one reason or another. That things like that happen. I still cared for him at the time. I was still in love with him at the time, and I just couldn't picture us apart. But since we've been apart for these 10 years, I can't see us together anymore. He says that there's no hope for us, that we're never going to get back together again. Because he told my son, when he talked to him about that last time that he had come to our church to see him preach, he told my son over the phone. And my son told me this, and I haven't told my ex-husband that I know this, but he told his son, our son, he says, he says, there is no hope for your mom and I. We're through. Well, when my son told me that, I kind of figured that as much. It didn't feel very good to hear it. It was very hurtful, but I kind of figured as much. I says, well, after 10 years, people drift apart, but as long as he stays true to Jesus and he still goes to church, I'm happy for him on that, and when he did come to church that Sabbath, and he didn't say hi to me or anything like that, and he left. I went outside, and he'd been long gone, because I guess he headed on home and everything. And I told one of the church members that he was there with his girlfriend, and this is the statement I made, and she kind of laughed about it, and I said, well, she made the statement, and I kind of laughed about it. I said, well, he was there with another girlfriend, that he cares a lot for her, and she says, well, you just look at it this way, better her than you. And I looked at her and I said, you're right. Let her deal with him. She's going to find out someday if he ever does get married again, which he says he's not going to, but if he ever gets married again, she's going to find out what kind of person he really is. Let her deal with him. I don't have to deal with him anymore. I dealt with him for 35 years. I know what he's like. She doesn't. So it is better her than me. I'll stay the way I am. I'll stay alone. And that's up to him if he wants to get remarried or not. He said no, that he wasn't going to. When we got divorced, he says, I'm not going to get remarried again. He just wants a lady friend. He wants a companion is what he wants. He wants a companion. And, and he's not saying that I can't have a companion. I just choose not to. I've got my dogs. They're my companions. Sure, they're four-legged ones. But something? I don't have to worry about them ever disagreeing with me on anything and arguing with me, because they love me unconditionally. I'm here for them. I give them their food and I give them their water. I take them for walks. And that's the unconditional love we should all have. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Man's best friend. You can't, and I love my animals. I really do. Don't get me wrong. I wish we could have stayed married, because I would have liked to have worked it out. But it's been 10 years, and I know there's not going to be any working out. There's not going to be any of us, anything getting back together again. I'm happy with that. I'm comforted with that. And I'm not going to worry about ever asking him to take me back again, because it's going to be futile to do it. He's not going to want to, And he made a statement before we got divorced, after he mentioned it to me, he says, now if you want to have pets, you can. And I says, well, I think I will. Thank you very much. Because he never really liked animals. That was another thing I didn't like, the fact he didn't like animals. But something, when he comes to visit, he loves my dogs, believe it or not. He'll call them over to him and he'll pet them and everything. So it's funny, the things that turned out the way they did. He's got a lady friend as a companion. I've got 2 dogs that are my companions. I don't need anything else. And I've got Jesus. He's my companion as well. And that's right. Love Israel. And like I said, the dogs don't argue with me. They don't call me names. They don't want to have the last word. They love me for me. They give me licks. They give me kisses to let me know that they're happy. They love me. And that's the kind of love that we all should have. And I'm just so thankful that I'm able to come in here and I'm able to give this story. I know it's a different story from other people. It may be a unique testimony, but it's unique to me because I went through a lot, you know. And it was a hard thing to go through with the father-in-law, and then to end up getting divorced later on, you know. And I really don't know which is worse, getting divorced or having a father-in-law that way, you know. But I just chalk it up as, you know, it is life. It is what it is, you know, and I can't change the fact that it happened, you know. And like I said before, if God wants me to have a companion, as far as a male companion, a two-legged one, I'm all for that. But if he doesn't, I'm happy just being here with my animals and loving them every day. And it can be very hard at times. Mine seemed to be easy. I thought it was easy. But when he pulled the rug out from underneath me and said that he wanted a divorce, that's when I thought, well, there's something wrong here. Why don't we work it out? But he says, I can't work it out because there's just no working out. We're not compatible anymore. But when he told me that, I realized, well, why bother? There's nothing I can do. Just go on. And, you know, if I find somebody else, I find somebody. But it's been 10 years. You know something? Since we've been divorced, I haven't looked for anybody. You know, I was upset that we got a divorce, and I didn't really want to get anybody. You know, I haven't even thought about getting anybody. I'm happy the way I am. As you can tell, I get in the kitchen and I cook my things in the Vitamix, you know, and I do cooking scopes. You can see how happy I am. I'm happy to share with what I know with other people. That's how happy I am, you know. And when he comes to visit, I'll show him what I've learned and everything, and cook for him too. You know, when he's here, I do love to cook for him when he's here, and I miss that. I miss cooking for him. But you know, because it's a lot harder cooking for one person than it is for two people. You know, that's true. Some people are meant to be single, and I believe that I'm meant to be single because it just wasn't meant to work out for us after 35 years. I would have thought it would have been, but it just wasn't meant to work out. I don't know why, but it wasn't meant to work out. It was all in God's plan. It is what it is, and I'm going to take each day as it comes, and I do. I sit here each day and I read my Bible. I talk to God. I do things that I need to do, and I ask the Lord to be with me on the bad times as well as the good times. What is God? He's God. He's up in heaven, preparing mansions for us. He's preparing a mansion for us, and he's coming back again someday. Yes, I did. You know, yes, you're right. I'm thankful for that. That is something to be positive about because I have 2 children, and I wouldn't replace them for anything in the world. You know, of course, like I said, I lost one of my children, but I still have 2 children that are still alive, and I've got grandchildren. So I've got grandchildren that I can love each and every, you know. Well, my son's children, I can love them every Sabbath because we go to the same church, so I can see them and talk to them. You know, I can't see the other ones, but you know, I can only talk to them on the phone. But I'm thankful that I have children. You know, I don't know what would have happened if we'd have gotten divorced before we had children, because I was always in my goal in life was to have children. You know, and we were only married a year, and I got pregnant with my son. And that was quite fast. It really was. And he was born from the time I got pregnant until he was born was exactly 9 months. Because I got pregnant on our wedding anniversary, and then he was born on January 4th of 1972. So as you can see, that's the way it is. You know, that was in God's plan too. You know, for me to have him there in 1972. You know, and then my daughter came along in 1975. And then I lost the other one in 1977. But I'm always grateful for my children. You know, I have my daughter to talk to every day. I have my son that I talk to him. You know, you're right. The times are very dark. And if you feel that way, I wouldn't have a child. You know, maybe it's not in God's plan that you have a child right now. Because look at this world, the way things are going. I mean, look at what happened last Sunday with this mass shooting in Las Vegas. We know things are only going to get worse. So we've got to plan ahead for what's to come and not worry about having children or or gaining a lot of money, being multimillionaires or anything like that, is planning for what's to come, being ready for what's to come. Because we know Jesus is coming again, and we got to be ready for it. That person here asks us, what is God? God, he's up in heaven. He's the one that made us. He made you. He made me. We're all here because God gave us each another day of life. That's the only reason we are here. God gives us the days of life. If he chooses not to let us wake up one morning, that's his choice. It's not ours. Yeah, it is scary. It is scary. You're right. Oh, well, that's probably a good thing for you, Darlene. You know, you probably miss them, but, you know, we're going to be, you know, we can, and when we get to heaven, that's right, time is very short. And to even think about having children anymore, and, you know, we got weddings, and people getting married and having children, you know, we haven't got much time on this earth anymore. And it makes you wonder, you know, how much time do we have? I don't think we got very much longer, but we have to get ourselves ready. We have to get our family ready. Our children, our, you know, any grandchildren we have to tell them about what's to come. You know, I have grandchildren that are old enough to accept the word. You know, they were in the church at one time, but like I said, my oldest grandson is an atheist. The other one, he doesn't want anything to do with religion either. And what's so sad about both of the oldest two grandchildren is they both unfollowed me on Facebook simply because I was sharing religious things on Facebook, and they didn't want to see it. That's how some people are. But you know, I told my daughter that's very, very sad. But that's not going to stop me from sharing. They just didn't want to hear it, but they needed to hear it. You know, we can't stop. And I still share things on Facebook a time or two, and people share things with me. I've got a lot of Periscope friends on Facebook, and the things that they share, I love it. And I love sharing them back too. That's right. Oh my goodness, persecution coming up. Oh, that's right. You really, in a way, I'm thankful that I don't have little children because we got persecution coming up. My children are both old enough to know what persecution is, you know, and they know, and they're going to have to choose for themselves whether they're going to accept the truth or not. If they're going to go the right way or the wrong way. Oh man, oh, I feel so sorry for you. You know, I've only had just that one pregnancy, you know, and I don't wish that on anybody. But you know, each and every day that goes by brings us that much closer to Jesus' second coming. And you know, and I think about it and I say, well, Lord, your coming is so near. It's even at the doors. And it's bringing me that much closer so that I can see my baby daughter again. I can see my family again. Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. You know, but we all have to get ready. Oh, you're not trying to give up. Well, that's okay, Darlene. You maybe the Lord's trying to tell you you're not meant to have children. You know that might be the thing. You're not meant to have any. And if that's the case, maybe that's a good thing, because with persecution coming up and everything, you don't want to have little children. You know, because you can't. You know, they can't fend for themselves. You know, so what are you going to do then? So maybe it's best. Oh, you have 4 kids already? Well, then you have plenty. You have plenty. You know, I had the 2 kids, then the one I lost. That was plenty for me. You know, I wasn't even planning on having. I had my son, and then I had my daughter, and I wasn't planning on getting pregnant again. But when I realized I was pregnant the 3rd time, I was thankful that I was pregnant again, but devastated when I lost her. But now that I know. And I knew at that time that I would see her again, you know, when Jesus comes back. And look how many years have gone by since then. She passed, I lost her in 1977. That was 40 years ago. And look we are much, much closer to Jesus' second coming than we were 40 years ago, you know. And she never got to grow up and never got to hear about Jesus, never heard the name of Jesus. I didn't have a chance to talk to her about him or anything like that. But you know, I'm going to see her again in heaven. And you know something? When I get a hold of that baby and they bring her to my arms, I'm never going to let her go, because I've lost her on this earth, but I will not lose her for eternity. You know, that's something to think about. Anything that we've lost, any family members we've lost on this earth, we're not going to lose them for eternity, because we know that the Satan is out to steal and kill and destroy. That's exactly what we're going to what he's out to try to do. Hence, that's why there was the Las Vegas killings. We know why those killings were there. Oh, you were born in 1977. Wow. And we know that the Las Vegas shootings were brought on by Satan because of sin. But still, it's devastating nonetheless to think about that 59 people lost their lives because of one person that didn't value life any more than he did. We all must value life. I come in here because I value life so much. I was on Curtis and Stacy's Periscope, and it was a very, very long one. And there was one in there that Curtis was dealing with that I don't think I would have had the patience to deal with him. He got on about the Sabbath, and he didn't want to, he kept pushing things on Curtis, and Curtis couldn't really get into his topic he was into, and he kept asking about the Sabbath, and he didn't think that the Sabbath was valid, and we're not under the law, we're under the new covenant, and things like that. And Stacy even said, well, I would have blocked him a long time ago. I probably would have too, but he was very, very patient with him, and he says he's going to come back in his Periscope another time, and maybe they'll get into the topic again. No, we can't. That's right. We can't be an open vessel for demon possession. And we know that we're going to get them on here. I've probably got some scoffers on here right now. I haven't noticed all the comments, and I will watch this later. But I'm thankful for the scoffers. If just one person comes in here and they've heard what I've had to say and it's touched their heart, then it's well worth it. Because that's all it takes is just one person. It doesn't take any more than that. Sorry about my dog knocked into the tripod. But that's all it takes is just one person to accept. That's all that I'm hoping for is one person. Thank good, no scoffers, wonderful. Well, there was one that came that when I was after I got done praying that told me I was too old. That was one right there. I don't know if that person ever left or not. I didn't block that person. But, people are going to come here and they're going to say that kind of remarks. I can't help it, I'm old. I'm 69 years old, going to be 70 in January. If I could turn back the clock and be 25 again, I would. But I can't turn back the clock. The Lord has given me 69 years of life, and I'm so thankful for that. He could have probably laid me to rest a long time ago, but he chose not to. But something? He just may lay me to rest one of these days because we got the persecution coming, and if he feels I can't make it through it, he'll lay me to rest. He'll lay anybody to rest that can't go through it. And that's what I've told the Lord. I says, Lord, if I can't make it through the time of trouble, please lay me to rest because I certainly don't want to take the mark of the beast. Absolutely not. And I know nobody else does either. We don't know from one day to the next if we're going to live the next day or not. That's what I meant to say. If you're going to wake up tomorrow morning or not. I don't know if I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning. We hope and pray that we are, but we don't know. We don't know from one day to the next if we're going to be here or not. So we have to live each day like it's our last. Get this message out. That's why I come in here. Try to get this message out because I don't know when it's going to be my last day. In fact, I don't even know when it's going to be Periscope's last day because we know there's going to come a time when Periscope may not be anymore. We're not going to be able to do this then. Facebook may be gone. Instagram, Snapchat, and all those will be gone. If we don't get the message out now when we have a chance, we might never have a chance. And that's why I'm doing this because I don't know. I can wake up tomorrow, never wake up tomorrow. God forbid that happens. But none of us never know. And I'm praying that I will wake up tomorrow. But like I said, if I don't, and I'm not around you, I'm in here as much as I can. Yeah, you're not. That's right. Yeah, that's right. We're going to be labeled as extremists. You say all religions are man-made. Well, I'm not going to go into that. I'm not going to argue with anybody. This is a Periscope that's about my testimony, and I'm not going to argue about anything today. If anybody takes anything away from this, I'm thankful that I could do this. If you've taken anything away from it, because my testimony may not be as unique as other people's are, but it's unique to me because it lets you know what I've gone through, and I'm still going through trials to this day. My trials are numerous, many people in here know what my trials are about my home and stuff like that. But the Lord has allowed me to stay in my home. He's given me this home, and I feel this is where He wants me to be. So I'm thankful for that. So I'm going to take each trial as it comes. and I'm going to praise him for them. I'm going to praise him in the good times and in the bad. You know, that's the hard thing to do. Praise him when things aren't going good, but we have to, because I want the strength to be able to go through what's coming upon us. That's right. He has sustained me. He has sustained all of you too, because each and every one of us are on this Periscope today because he allowed each and every one of us to get up this morning. You know, and when I wake up in the morning and I see that it's time to get up, I say, well, thank you, Lord, for giving me another day of life. You know, we have to be thankful for each and every day of life. You know, and I'm thankful for the Sabbath. I don't know how many more Sabbaths we're going to have on this earth. We're going to have lots of them in heaven because we're going to be there for eternity. We're going to have many Sabbaths in heaven. But on this earth, I don't know. Don't know how many more Sabbaths we're going to have. But I'm going to cherish each and every one that we still have, because I don't know when the last one will be. Only God knows that. You know, and like I said, you take each day as it comes. You live each day like it's your last day on earth, but you plan like you got a long time to go yet. And that's what I'm doing. I'm planning like I got a long time to go yet. In fact, I know this is it's Sabbath for me, not Sabbath for others, but this is a hat, a baby hat that I made for a lady in our church that wants the Oregon Duck colors, because the family goes to the Oregon Duck games, and I'm going to make a sweater and booties the same color, green and yellow. As you can see, this is, yes, I'm going to make the hats and the booties the same color. This is right now, this is the soles, it's so, and then the green will go up on top. But one of these times I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do a Periscope on crocheting right in front of you. I'll set my tripod up and I'll show you how I crochet each of the things that I do. But I'm doing this. That's part of my ministry too. We had communion last Sabbath, and she had mentioned to me that she has a great grandson coming. And I says, well, it's time for me to make another layette again. She says, well, you don't have to. But she says, you do good work. I says, I will definitely make it. And I was planning on making it in blue because it's a boy. Well, she calls me the other day when I was in Walmart. And she says, Karen, she says, could you make the layette yellow and green, the duck colors? I says, I sure can. So then I had to change my whole idea what I was going to do and make it yellow and green. So you know, that's the way the things are. In fact, I will show you the booties that I'm going to make. Now, granted, they're in red, blue, and white, but I'm going to make these green, yellow, and white, and I think I can find them. And I will show you that the booties that I'm going to make, they're actually sneakers, but I will show you the picture if I can find them. They're in here somewhere. They're in this. Where are they at? But anyway, I love doing this for other people, and I want to keep doing it because it's part of my ministry. Oh, here they are. This is what I'm going to make for that baby. Aren't they cute? I'm going to make them red, green, yellow, and white. And I might scope it when I get them done. And yes, aren't they adorable? That's what I'm going to make for them. And I love doing stuff like that, you know, because God has given me the gift. God has given me the gift to crochet for other people. You know something? When I was 18 years old, I taught myself how to crochet. That's something I forgot to mention in my testimony, that I lived with my dad, and I wanted to learn how to crochet, so I got crochet books, a crochet book and a knitting book, and knitting needles and that stuff, and I taught myself. I just looked at the illustrations and taught myself how to do it. It took me a little while to grasp it, but once I got it, it's just commonplace for me now, and I just automatically do it, you know. And I love doing stuff for other people, you know, and I love coming on here, and I love sharing the gospel with other people. My testimony was just one of the many things I like sharing. And I know I've done this testimony many times, but it seems like I'm always adding things to it that I forgot to mention before, or something else that I may have thought of that I've gone through. But as you can tell, my life always hasn't been easy. But you know something? Oh, thank you. You know, my life hasn't always been easy. But you know something? We were never promised prosperity. We were never promised easy times. We're going to have easy times as well as bad times, you know. But I'm thankful for each and every one of them, because it strengthens me for the times to come. Because if I'm not strong enough for what's to come, I'm certainly not going to make it through, and none of us are. So we have to stay steadfast and stay on the straight and narrow, and get into the Word of God and read it. And reread it. And like I said, this is my 4th time of going through the Bible, where the Bible becomes clear to me each and every time that I read it. It becomes a lot easier to understand, you know, and it will, You know, sure, there's a lot of symbolism in the Bible, but if you don't understand it, you just have to have the Holy Spirit give you discernment, and He will. But you know, I am just so grateful for the Bible. There's coming a day when we're not going to have those either. You know, they may be confiscated, and I plan on keeping my Bible as long as I can. That's why I suggest you get into your Bible and read it. Read it, because there may be coming a day when you won't have your Bible. Of course, I've got it on my phone too. I've got it on my iPad. I've got Ellen White's writings on my iPad as well. You know, and I've got Ellen White's writings I can also read in book form. And I suggest that we do that too. Get into her writings, because she has a lot of things to say in there that we need to hear. We need to read. I'm 69, but that's immaterial how old I really am. But anyway, we need to get into her writings too. We need to get into the Word of God. We need to stay strong. And if you're going through trials, praise God for them, because your trials are there to help you to grow stronger. You know, and you know something? My trials are different from your trials, and your trials are different from everybody else's. But you know something? No, I don't. I only speak English. But you know something? Your trials are there to make you strong. My trials are to make me strong too. My trials may be different than yours, but I don't wish my trials on you, and you probably don't wish your trials on me, because everybody goes through something different, you know. I could say that going through my divorce was a trial. It was a trial that took me a long time to get over. It's not something that it was easy to do, because I was not used to living by myself. I'd always lived with somebody. You know, I lived with my aunt when I was younger. And then after I graduated from high school, then he came along and we got married. So I always had somebody to live with. So to live by myself was a very hard thing to do. But after 10 years, I've gotten used to it by now. I say I can come and go as I please. If I don't want to go somewhere, I don't have to. If I want to go somewhere, I just get in my car and I go. I don't have to account to anybody for anything, you know, and that's the best part of all. And I can fix for myself what I like. I don't have to worry about somebody else not liking what I like. And that's the main thing too. You know, when you got somebody else to cook for, like Erlene has her husband and her son to cook for, makes it a little bit hard, because one person will like one thing and another one will like something else, and you don't have a happy medium. Fortunately for me, when I was married to my husband, we both pretty much liked the same thing, so I didn't have that problem too much. But now that I'm by myself, I fix what I like, what I know I'm going to eat, and I don't have to worry about somebody coming along and say, oh, that again, you know. Yeah, you know, it can be difficult being married, because you're not always going to see eye to eye. I said, we were married 35 years. We didn't always see eye to eye. Obviously not, because we're divorced now. But, you know, you're going to have your trials and your problems in your marriage. Let me get some water. But like I said, we were never to the point where, oh, wonderful, congratulations, happy anniversary. But it never got to the point where we hit each other. We never did that at all. We didn't hit each other. You know, we loved each other enough that we didn't want to lay a hand on each other. And I'm so thankful for that, because I know there's so many people that get into an abusive relationship and it's hard to get out of them. You know, and if they try to get out, they threaten them. You know, I never had that to worry about. You know, like I said, the divorce was not an easy thing to go through, but after 10 years, I finally got through it. You know, at first, the first few months were the hardest, you know, because I did a lot of crying at night and things like that. That was the hardest, is being by myself at night. During the daytime, it isn't so bad, but at nighttime, it was the hardest. So right now, no, not so much. You know, I just fall asleep and that's it. But being alone at night was the hardest at first. And I'm just so thankful that God has got me through this. He's given me a way to get through all this, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. I just fall asleep, and if I wake up in the middle of the night, it's to let my dogs out, and then I go right back to sleep again. You know, God is good, isn't He? He really is good. He's good all the time, and all the time He's good. And He's helped me through so much, and I know He's going to continue to help me through so much more. Like I said, my testimony probably was powerful to you. It may not seem so powerful to some people and powerful to others, but to me, it was a testimony that I wanted to share, because it's unique and it's different from everybody else's. You know, and I love testimonies. I love giving them, and I love hearing other people's testimonies too, because we all have a thing to share with everybody. That's right, he does. He does know what's best. You know, he knows more for each and every one of us than we know for ourselves. He knew for me that I was probably going to have this divorce. He knew that I was going to struggle with it, but I've gotten through it. You know, and another thing that's been the hardest for me to do was to file for bankruptcy. If you think that was easy, that has not been easy. But God has gotten me through that too, and I'm thankful He has. I've got a good attorney, and everything's been taken care of, and I know He's going to see me through the rest of that. That's right. Prayer does change things. That's right. We always have to pray, you know. And I pray, even though my ex-husband we're not married anymore, I still pray for him. You know, because I told him, you know, he'll tell me about things that are going on back there, and I tell him, I says, just be careful. I don't want anything happening to you, and I don't. I care enough for him that I don't want anything happening to him. You know, I don't want him falling off of roofs or anything like that. I want him to be healthy and happy, you know, and I want him to be around for a while. You know, he's a lot older than I am. He's in his 70s. I think he's about 74 right now. But, you know, I still want him around for a while, you know, because he needs to be around for his son, you know. But I'm thankful that we can be friends, even though our marriage was a flop, that we're still friends. He does talk to me. He's hospitable. He asks me how my day's going. I ask him how his day's going or what he's planning on doing that day, you know. And he has helped me in my situation with my rental, try to get fixed up. And I'm thankful for that because he knows my situation. But, you know, we can all be thankful for our trials. There, you know, our good trials as well as bad, you know. And I can't say they're all been good, you know. But you know something? The Lord has been there for each and every one of them. I get through one trial, another one may be right behind. But I thank Him for it. I wish they wouldn't be, but they're there because it's only going to make me stronger each and every time. And it's going to be that way with you too. Just stay strong. Stay vigilant. Stay in the Word of God. And whatever you do, stay true to Jesus. Don't give up on Him because He's never going to give up on you. Stay true to Him because there's coming a day when you may be asked to recant your faith. Whatever you do, don't recant your faith because you do not want to be on the wrong side. You want to go to heaven to spend eternity with Jesus, and so do I. And I hope I see you there all someday. I think I'm going to call this Periscope quits now, so I can get something to eat. So and I will sing my sanctuary song, and then we'll call it quits. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Let us all be a living sanctuary for Jesus. And as John 8:32 says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. I hope you have a great and marvelous night, wherever you might be, or day, wherever you might be. Stay true to yourself. Stay true to God most of all. And be kind to one another. Love each other as God has loved you. Take care. God bless, and bye-bye. Love you all. Bye-bye.